Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to use the microphone. I didn't prepare a romantic voice on purpose because it's a tango night. I'm just a little sick. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're really happy to be here. My colleagues are happily relaxing in the green room while I come here and chat with you, so I'm having fun. No, they are not. Let me ask you, how many of you have been involved with tango? Tango, like dance, have heard what tango is. You can picture the lady with a rose in her mouth, right? That's what almost everybody pictures, right? Do we have dancers here? Tango dancers? One? Well, dancers, it counts, but tango dancers. So just one.
Wannabe.
Wannabe? Well, when you see the couple dancers we have later on tonight, you may want to jump in and say, hey, you want to dance? Katya and Eric will be joining us tonight. They're professional dancers, and really they will show how beautiful this dance is. So let me start with a little bit of background. I won't keep it too long, but my personal background, because I'm a musician, but I'm also a tango dancer. I still call myself a musician before calling myself a tango dancer. But it is quite interesting how the change came. I've been playing since I remember. A few layers of hair ago, I started playing music. And one day, I discovered tango as a musician. I was playing with several groups in my hometown in Mexico. I'm from Yucatan, Mexico. By the way, I don't know if this was a coincidence, but I love that the Mexican flag is in the middle. Thank you so much. Let's hope it's a coincidence. So I started playing tango, and people ask me, why never mariachi? I don't know. That's the way it happened. So I started playing tango. I love tango music, and one day, this is in 2007, I went back home to premiere a tango show. I was already studying in the US. And my mentor at the time told me, I have a ballet that I wanted to conduct. But in order to conduct a ballet, you need to know and learn how dancers think. I said, well, they have to follow the music, right? That's what they do. I said, no, go take some dance lessons. I have to say that I hated dancing back then. Hated is a strong word, but yeah, I guess that's what it was. I was a teenager that would go to a dance place, and I would say to the girls, leave your purses here, I'll take care of them. You can dance, we'll just keep an eye on the purses. That was me. But then I discovered the beauty of this dance, took a few lessons, noticed that it was good, that I could do it. I guess my musical background helped me, and I started dancing tango. So that's been a few years already, since 2007. But let's go back to tango, the actual history of tango. I wanted this lecture to be really casual, so if at any time you feel like jumping in and interrupting and asking a question, please do so. Let's have that opportunity. Again, that's why I didn't bring a PowerPoint or things like that. Keep it casual. Yes, sir?
Where does the word tango come from?
That's an excellent question. Next one? No, I'm kidding. The word tango, like many things in tango, are really in the blurred area. Some say that it's an alliteration of the African population that lived in Buenos Aires in the late 1800s, and tango, or similar sounds that Argentinians started thinking of, oh, tango, right? Instead of tango, it's tango, and then they started using it. But if we go and look at Spanish music, flamenco, for example, they have tangos, they have tanguillos. And then, what was first? What's the story? Was the chicken or the egg, right? What happened first? So really, there's no clear research that could prove the word comes from this, right? So it's really blurred. Many things in tango are like that. Like that instrument that I will talk about later on also has a really interesting but blurred history. Thank you for the question. Somebody else, or I will just start talking and you will not be able to stop me. So please stop me with a question. Let's think 1880s, Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a port, is the capital city of Argentina, in South America in the banks of the Rio de la Plata. Rio de la Plata is that water portion that separates from the Atlantic and Uruguay and Argentina. So at the time, just if you are interested in the history of the city of New York, for example, New York City, you know that a lot of American immigration came through that port, if not all of it. Same, excuse me?
I was just saying Ellis Island.
That's correct, Ellis Island. So similar situation with Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires had a commercial relationship with England at the time when England was one of the superpowers of the world. So being a commercial port, there was a lot of immigration there as well. If you go through the last names of the major tango orchestra composers, see if you can tell me what's the background. Pugliese, Di Sarli, Troilo, drawing a blank. D'Arienzo, I think I said it already, Frasconi, and so forth. What's the background? Italian. Lots of the Argentinian population has an Italian background. Even today, if we see, just open the phone book and you see a lot of Italian last names. The way Argentinians speak Spanish is very Italian sounding as well. So when I went to Buenos Aires, as soon as I opened my mouth, like, you're a foreigner. Yes, I know. Because the accent, the rhythm of the way they talk is very different, and it does resemble a little bit of Italian language. But back to 1800s. We have migration from Europe to Buenos Aires. We have a population which is basically 80% male and 20% female. Just imagine. 8 men per 2 women.
Sounds good to me.
I'll cover the microphone, I don't know what it was. So just imagine the effect on society. Most of these men, working men, came to this continent, as we know, trying to make a better living with the hope of bringing their family over or going back with better fortune and better finances and so forth. We find that a lot of music is imported as well from Europe. Mazurkas from Spain. We have Cuban music like the habanera. How many of you like classical music? How many of you know Bizet, Charles Bizet? George Bizet, I'm sorry. I'm going to fail my history exam. George Bizet, Carmen, rum, ba-rum, ba-rum, right? The famous habanera. If you speed up an habanera, it becomes a milonga. Rum, ba-rum, bum, bum, ba-rum, bum, bum, ba-rum, bum, bum, and that's a milonga. So it's the same structure. Actually, Milonga del 900, which we're going to perform tonight, has pretty much the same structure, the same rhythm, the same sound of the accompaniment of Carmen's habanera. So there's a big relationship there between these two styles. Tango also takes from local and regional types of music. If you're curious about these folk music of Argentina, if you get involved in the music of La Pampa and the outside, the non-urban Buenos Aires, you will notice that those folk sounds get mixed from time to time in tango, especially in the milongas. There's something called milonga campera, which is milonga from the countryside, that permeates into tango music. I'm going to be doing digressions because this history is so intricate, but it's really interesting. So there's this kind of music that starts sounding in Buenos Aires. They don't know yet what it is. I guess it's the same that with the pop music that we have nowadays. Like when reggaeton came out, or rap, right? It just starts coming out and people are like, what's that new thing? And suddenly it becomes a style and people know how to dance it, and it starts becoming a pop culture expression. So same with tango. Tango is an expression of urban Buenos Aires. Some people may call it, oh, it's folk music. It's not folk, it's urban. is purely urban, although it does borrow, as I mentioned before, from some folk ingredients. So the music starts playing in little cafes, in little confiterias, they call them in Buenos Aires, where people go have sweets, like coffee shops. Let's call them all coffee shops. At this time, musicians didn't really have much musical training. These were amateurs or improvised people who just like to get together and jam, let's use a modern term, and jam together to that new style of music that they were recreating or putting together from the other music that they were listening to. Little by little, it starts becoming a danceable rhythm. Remember I mentioned 80% male population, 20% female population. Well, we're all adults here, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, everybody over 18. I don't want to be kicked out because of what I said, because I want to have to say it. Tango makes its way into the nightlife of Buenos Aires. And I'm being cautious when I say nightlife. I think you know what I'm referring to. With 80% male, 20% female population, you understand the rest. So tango starts being played in cabarets, and it becomes a staple of the dance floors of the cabarets. So here's a very interesting situation with the dance portion of it. With so many men and so little women, who do you practice with?
The men.
With the men. So there's a lot of photographies from the early 1900s where you see a bunch of men dancing together because they had to practice. It became like a competition. If you were going to a dance party, they just call it dance party for the sake of cleanliness, and 8 guys, 2 ladies. Who gets to dance with the ladies? Not necessarily the most handsome man, but the best dancer, right? So that's why they practiced, that's why they worked out at it, because when you showed up at the dance floor with your fancy black and white shoes, your suit, if you're not a good dancer, the lady's gonna say, hey, sorry, not interested, right? They were looking for the best dancers. So tango becomes an expression of the lower neighborhoods of Buenos Aires. The music truly develops in the brothels. It's part of some people think, oh, the humble beginnings of tango. I don't care if it's humble or not, it's fantastic music, it's fantastic dance. It happens to develop there because of the social environment of the time. Perhaps if the population would have been different, if the economics would have been different, maybe it would have developed in the fancy ballrooms of the rich people. Who knows? So anyway, let's continue this non-straight line development of tango. In 1906, there is a ship that goes from Buenos Aires to Europe to, it is like the Marines, the Argentinian Marines that needed to train for, their skills in the ocean and with the ship. They go train through Europe, and they decide to bring with them a small print, hundreds, thousands of them, to give away in every port where they stop, of a famous tango called La Morocha, or the Brunette. This tango, very early, very primitive, if you wish. It's a very simple little tango. It gets, every port where they stop, they left it as a souvenir for, a ship from Argentina all the way in South America, crossing all the way to England or Paris, or not Paris, but France or Spain and so forth. So if we move a little further, in the 1920s, we see that tango becomes the thing in Paris. It is, using again modern terminology, the hip thing in Paris. Parisians start dancing tango, it's a sensation of the time. If you go on Google and you look for Paris tango postcard, you'll find a lot of examples of really cute little images of Parisian people dressed in tuxedo or tails, dancing the tango. in very elaborate poses. Very, very pretty, but not the tango that we see today, or not the traditional tango from Buenos Aires. So 1920s, tango makes it to Paris. Is really the exciting thing at the time. Everybody wants to dance tango. Meanwhile, in Buenos Aires, the middle and higher classes are rejecting tango because it's the dance of the poor. It's the dance of the outskirts. Why I, rich guy, would dance what the poor are dancing? Is what that tough? I know it sounds pretty rough to mention it that way, but that's the way the history books say it that way. There was a big social gap between those who danced and those who didn't. Obviously, most of the dancers, most of the musicians also come from the lower parts of society. Then, when news traveled from France to Argentina that tango is the hip thing in Paris, what do you think happened?
They all told it.
Well, everybody wants to dance.
Everybody wants to dance. Oh, of course, it's our national dance, right? We all want to, we've been doing this forever. No, they hated it because, again, of the social gap. So now, different parts of society are interested in tango. Very important tango figures like El Cachafaz, which was a famous early primitive tango dancer. There's a couple of videos out there of him dancing in really funny positions and those little funny things, which are early tango styles. He becomes one of the instructors, one of the first tango instructors. The rich are starting to pay for lessons because they want to learn what the Parisians are dancing. Why do they want to learn that? Not just because it's hip, but because rich people from Buenos Aires used to go on vacation to Paris. So it kind of makes sense, right? It's a social thing. I go to Paris, I'm from Buenos Aires, I know how to dance, I can fit in this society when I go visit. At the same time, music is developing quickly. The so-called orquesta típica, or typical orchestra, that plays tango is starting to take shape. The late 1930s, mid-40s, actually 40s to 50s is the golden era of tangos, and then a little bit after that. The orquesta típica, which has generally 4 or 5 violins, 4 bandoneons at the front, and a string bass. That's the orquesta típica. A little more, a little less, depending on which orchestra and which period and so forth. But that's pretty much instrumentation. That ensemble is already taking shape and becoming the ensemble of tango. Tango started with guitar, flute, violin, whatever was practical, whatever thing people had at their disposal. And you think about it, a guitar is really practical. Like they say in my town in Mexico, every family has a guitar. And it's almost a rule where I'm from, or was in my time when I was young and beautiful, a few decades ago. So, guitar, violin, flute, and suddenly this oddity makes its way into the tango world. It is an oddity. Have you ever seen a bandoneon before? Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of you. It's like an accordion, right? Mm-hmm. And then one day when I didn't know, I said, well, yeah, the accordion. No, it's not an accordion. An accordion has keys, a bandoneon has buttons. The bandoneon, you push the buttons in the accordion, you push them towards you. So they're different. Also, the interior of the instrument, the metal plates that it has, all that is a little different. So that instrument makes its way to the tango band, the tango ensemble or the tango orchestra. But this one also has a really odd story or history. You want me to share it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you even if you don't say yes. The bandoneon was originally conceived as a portable organ, like a church organ. In Germany, small churches in small towns that didn't have the money to buy an organ used to buy a harmonium, which is a small keyboard, and someone will be pumping air while the other one is playing, right? But think, yes, it's more practical than a 400 pipe organ, but how practical is it to go in procession? Somebody's bumping, somebody's carrying, and the other one is playing. It's not practical. So this instrument was created. It is way more practical than the other two. It has, I'm going to put this down for a second, because I need my two hands. I don't know if you can see from there, but there are two little rings here. You see that? So when they were carrying it in procession, they will put a harness where they will carry it and walk and play at the same time. And I will need my bench. They could play. It does sound like an organ, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty neat. The other side is a little lighter. But it still has that sad tone that we associate with tango, right? That's a little bandoneon sound. But I said it's an oddity. Well, how many of you have played a piano or have a little musical training? Yeah, a little bit, and we know that da da dee da 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 dee da, right? Da dee da 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 da. If you just pass your finger, magic, it sounds. Well, are you ready? Pretty disorganized. So that blows your mind from first lesson. Next time I was opening the instrument, right? I'm going to do the same, closing it. When you push out, you have one finger. When you push in, you have a different finger. But it doesn't stop there. So basically, you have two different things and two different things. You're learning 4 keywords when you play. Lucky me, for tango, you almost always play out. Sometimes you have to balance. And that means that if I'm playing a chord here, in order to keep the same chord, I have to switch my finger to produce the same chord. So it gives you a few headaches when you're learning. It's pretty tricky to learn. But it's beautiful and it's very unique. So this instrument, created for church processions, it opens up like a big worm. If I don't want it to sound when I open, I press this valve. And you just hear the breathing. And if I want sound, I press it. So, invented for the church. Makes its way, you already know, right? Makes its way to Buenos Aires, supposedly brought by a sailor perhaps, who knows who brought it there. And it ends up in the brothel. Because that's where they were playing music. And someone, who knows who, decides that this instrument fits what they needed. It's practical, somehow practical, you know, it's compact. You don't need to be carrying a piano around when you have this little thing that can accompany it and can play melodies. Right? So you have both options, just like a mini piano with an organ sound. Is easy to carry around, pretty rough. Just take it anywhere. So it made its way to the tango world. At the beginning, as I said, for small ensembles, bandoneon, guitar, violin, a flute. Sometimes in very early recordings you can hear a trumpet. You know, whatever they had at their disposal that was practical. And then when the music starts refining, with the ensemble starts getting a little more organized, classier, if you wish. It may not be the best word, but a little more sophisticated, if you wish. They add 4 of them. 4 bandoneons. Just imagine the sound of 4 of them at the same time. Pretty impressive. Then you have the 4 violins in the back, the bass, and the piano. That's a true orchestra. You have a lot of sound coming out of such an ensemble. So again, 1940s, golden era, many orchestras are playing in Buenos Aires. It is the music that is sounding the equivalent of our pop music today that people, I don't know, in their 20s are listening to. People were listening to these in that era. But then something happens. Late 50s. Who can tell me what happens musically at the time?
Rock and roll.
In this country?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. So if rock and roll was a sensation here, imagine what happens there. Whoa, music coming from the US, rock and roll. Tango declines. Tango's the first big decline of tango. Of course, the youth wants to dance to the newest stuff. When you have, I cannot play rock on this, I wish, but you know, tango has its passion, has its sensual sounds and so forth, but rock and roll has that thing, right, that you need to move and you want to move to it. So it starts taking over in the dance rooms. We see back then, there's this fight between foreign rock and roll, local tango. We see the appearance of D'Arienzo, Juan D'Arienzo, el rey del compás, the king of the measure. This guy comes up with the idea that, okay, well, they are bored, people are bored with tangos that sound like this. You may fall asleep after a few more measures. So then he comes up with punch, 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 and then tango starts coming up again. The youth are speaking up because, oh, that's a cool beat that I can follow and move to. You know, nothing new under the sun. It still happens today. If the beat is punch, like young people will follow it because it has something cool to follow. Tango picks up again. Most of D'Arienzo's songs, which we will play in his style, we will play a couple songs today, have that energetic, punchy rhythm. But then, at the same time, other major orchestras like Aníbal Troilo, which was a fantastic bandoneon player, one of the best ever. Aníbal Troilo hires this young guy called Astor Piazzolla. Astor Piazzolla, are we familiar with the name? Maybe, yeah. Modern tango. So Astor Piazzolla starts working for Aníbal Troilo. Big name orchestra. Aníbal Troilo is one of the very best of his time and ever. Piazzolla starts working for him. And obviously, you know, following in the tradition of what Troilo used to write, etc. But Piazzolla, being a young guy, energetic, creative, wanting to put his own flavor, he starts going away from the tradition. For those of you who are familiar with music or the dance, tango is generally written in 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Piazzolla takes that same 4, but alters it. He copies from Stravinsky, who was writing music at the same time. He copies a little bit from Bela Bartok and other classical musicians that were writing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So if you're a dancer and you're trying to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, well, you're already behind. You start losing where you are because the music, the way Piazzolla writes it, is uneven. 3, 3, and 2 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. Makes sense? The rhythm is not even. So today is normal. Yeah, it's uneven. What about it? Back then, really hard. Especially the most traditional people in the tango world, they start going away because they cannot dance to this new stuff that is hard. It's not your usual 1, 2, 3, 4. None of that anymore. So it's pretty hard. Piazzolla travels to Europe, becomes a star in Paris. Do we see a little cycle happening again? Piazzolla travels to Europe, becomes a star in Paris, comes back to Argentina, and they start liking him a little. There is a documentary about his life where he says that people will see him on the streets and will stalk him and want to punch him for what he did to their tango. He was that passionate. He also mentions that people will throw eggs at his house and things like that. Just imagine. It's a little rough, but it tells you about a passion that we don't have anymore, I think. Who will have the guts to do such a thing nowadays? But it shows the energy, the passion.
I said if you go to Brooklyn on Halloween, you will. It happened.
It happens. So we see this renaissance of tango, but it's deviating now. It's not the traditional music. It starts moving into a more contemporary, less traditional style. From Piazzolla, we can move on to other orchestras that are active today, like Bajo Fondo or Gotan Project, that are way out there, right? If you compare them to the big orchestras of the 40s and you put them together, they collapse there because they are antagonists. You know, tradition versus avant-garde, they clash. Beautiful, very interesting, really hard to dance for a traditional social dancer. That's the tango that we may see today on stage, on a show. You think you can dance, Dancing with the Stars, that kind of stuff. It is not a traditional tango anymore. It is a mutation, and I say it in a good way. I'm not criticizing. It's a mutation of the tradition, more modern, with newer steps, with newer tonalities, with newer usages of the melodic material. You hear percussion. Never would you hear in traditional tango a percussion instrument. When you think of it, of the conversation we've had so far, I mentioned piano, string bass, violins, bandoneones, guitar, flute, right? Even a trumpet, never a percussion. It was not part of the music. Although, in Uruguay, they have candomble or candombe, which is African music that did make its way into the Uruguayan branch. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you know, but La Comparsita, which is perhaps the most famous tango ever, is actually Uruguayan, not Argentine. Mato Rodriguez, the composer of the original tune, was from Uruguay, not from Argentina. The music was made famous by Argentinian orchestras, yes, but written by Uruguay. So I think Argentinian pride is slightly hurt by that major fact that the biggest and most famous tango is not Argentinian. How are we doing on time?
In South America, in the banks of the Rio de la Plata, tango is the music that has inspired the greatest dance ever created. Let us abuse your senses with powerful sounds that draw out desires and ignite passions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Quarteto Bravo.
Divided in sets of three. We call them tandas, sets of 3 songs. In this case, we had 3 waltzes. So after the waltzes, generally there will be a so-called cortina or curtain, where the band or the DJ plays a different type of music just to cut the mood. A little song, Cuban song, something like that, something else that will cut the mood. People go sit or go look for a different partner for dancing, etc. So the next time there will be 3 times. finished one tango, right? The next tango will have three very different styles. Modern, back to a little older, and then the last one, if you remember what I mentioned about the milonga campera, which is more folk, it's a little bit of that, just in a slower tempo. breath. Standard is milonga. So 3 milongas, a little fast, a little more jumping. If you feel like it, we have room for you.
Yeah.
closest pronunciation is in Portuguese because it's Brazilian. It is not Argentinian nor Uruguayan. So it does have some of the characteristics of the Argentinian milonga, but you will hear, especially in the bass, or bass player right here, that it has a different accompaniment at the beginning. And it sounds like. So it's a different type of accompaniment, and we will then go back to ching, 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 ching. But it's mixed because again it's not a typical traditional thing. This is our last stand-up, but that doesn't mean it's the lightest one, it's actually the one with more punch. We have three really beautiful songs, A la Gran Muñeca, Felicia, and La Comparsita. Remember, La Comparsita is Uruguay. Thank you so very much for coming, for having us tonight. It's been a pleasure to be back in Buffalo. I haven't been here in a while. Thank you again to Casimiro, to the organization, to the university, to everyone, especially to you for coming here. Let's finish with the king of the tangos, La Comparsita.